What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review a 2010 mixtape by Rocko. Basically, this product is called Wildlife, and it came out in the winter of 2010. So the thing about this particular product is this is the follow-up product that Rocko's self-made from like the winter of 2008 as far as pitches like that kind of happened. So he took off at like a decent break, but the thing about that particular product is apart from like the hit single I'ma Do Me and then the follow-up single Tomorrow, which really didn't chart that heavily, Rocko basically disappeared before even like the spring of 2008 had started or really even got close to finishing. I would have to say, I definitely think by the time, from what I remember and just pitches like that, how it kind of happened, by like obviously by May, June, July 2008, Rocko was kind of this ghost, and that this was particularly the vibe behind it. But he just kind of disappeared for a little bit. But he did find some new tricks on this particular album. Apparently, Maybe, and originally the song Maybe was going to be on Rocko's second album, which apparently, I mean, I don't know, is full blown what was happening there, if Rocko was ever going to put out a second album. I think there was like some rumors or pitches like that. Maybe he promoted like the concept of like a second album back in like mid 2009, late 2009, pitches like that, but it just didn't manifest. He might have put out like some street singles, but this is at least one that kind of happened. This is kind of like a street album here. You can actually purchase this particular product. I want to say Wildlife is a good pitch to kind of get that. Maybe was an official single that was released, so it's just kind of the concept about it. I look after this is a classic mixtape here. I would definitely have to say it tries some new, some good aspects of some newness factors on here. This is pretty much one of the initial points of Future, the rapper Future, as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. The trap heavy rapper Future, as far as that would particularly going to go. He sounds a lot more malnourished on this particular product compared to how rich and savvy he sounds, obviously, by this point in 2024 and years like 2016 and 2014 and even 2011. I'd have to say in particular, it's just a good concept. So this is like some of the earliest stages of what from this would be some of the earliest stages from what I remember hearing from Future, and at least in like this would be some of the earliest stages that at least I remember of hearing Future as far as pitches like that kind of happen. Rocko is one of the ones responsible for finding Future, if you didn't know that. Fun fact about that. But yeah, Rocko is on here in full display. It's a good pitch, definitely some hit quality stuff. There's some Zaytoven beats on here. Rocko is from Atlanta, so there's pitches like that. Zaytoven is on here a few times. There's some trap centric type stuff, some stuff that sounds similar to Gucci Mane, Migos, and OJ the Juice Man, some pitches like that as far as that particular kind of goes. Some other good bops to kind of get on here. Some of these kind of sound like the Future type sound that would manifest on albums like Streets Callin' by Future, the mixtape Streets Callin', Dirty Sprite, some of those type pitches, along with Pluto, the hit album from 2012 that would come out a couple years after this. So this is a good concept. It's just an amalgamation of what trap music was kind of up to, because back in like February, March of 2010 when this product was coming out, it wasn't as full blown on display here. It was kind of in like a metamorphosis type stage as far as how some of these things were kind of happening. And this is kind of like a decent conduit for kind of blending some of that tough stuff, as far as blending like the last after effects of like late 2000s rap with like early 2010s trap and things like that. The OJ, the Juice Man, Migos, Gucci Mane, Future, Yo Gotti, some of those type folks that would kind of be around that particular time. It's just a good concept. Rocko does. The thing about it is Rocko pretty much takes to this particular new sound of trap era, of new era 2010s trap music like a fish to water. I definitely had to say it's a good concept kind of see that. He doesn't have too much nostalgic moments as far as pitches like that kind of happen. I'd say apart from like the song Lingo, I'd probably say for the most part there just aren't a ton of ones. In some cases you might think that Rocko just happened to be a product of like the early 2010s, because in terms of like another song that's as beastly as I'ma Do Me or something like that, or even like the relative kind of glared pitch of like Tomorrow, doesn't really have those beastly type ones. I mean, Maybe is definitely a good song, but it does feel like more of like a buzz single and like a relative just like street single as far as pitches like that kind of happen. There's no follow-up, so that's just kind of the concept. But what it is, this is still a classic. I was not expecting to give this product the rave score I'm going to give it. I'm going to go ahead and say that it gets a 10 out of 10, which is surprising just because Rocko, when I reviewed Self-Made back in early 2023, I want to say I gave that maybe not necessarily like a 10 out of 10, but I don't know. It seemed like maybe it was like a 7 or an 8, something like that, something of that relative pitch. There were a few songs on there I didn't remember not as full blown recommending. And then Swag Season from late 2007 that I reviewed back in March of this year was kind of another good concept. I mean, that had some gems on there, but it was kind of somewhat underhanded in terms of the pitch behind it. Apart from like the singles that wound up being on the Self-Made album anyways, it didn't have a lot of exclusives to kind of warrant. I mean, it was a relatively good mixtape, but it just didn't have enough exclusives, I'd have to say. But this project definitely is bolstered. This project is definitely bolstered with hits. Love the single Maybe. There's some other hits on here. There's plenty of good songs. Out of 19 songs on this particular project, there's actually 15 songs minus 4 interludes and skits as far as that particular kind of happens. But then out of those 15 songs, I wound up recommending 12. So it's a really excellent type pitch to kind of get here. So it's just a real pretty sheer and blistering type of appeal to get some of these. Just a real excellent concept. So I like the improvement that Rocko made around this time because it basically is a trend-setting type project. Rocko is kind of one of the conduits, and that's the thing. When you think of Rocko, most people nowadays only think of him for I'ma Do Me, some pitches like that. He's not terribly known. Maybe some people might know the song You Ain't Need No, some pitches like that with Rick Ross and some of those type of folks. I forget other rappers. Maybe Future was on that song as well. But I look after it, just being able to say that he kind of helped graft some of the times as far as going from like 2007, 2008, Drumma Boy and Red Spida and some of those type folks from trying to think of some other Midnight Black, some of those type producers from like late 2000s type fare as far as that particular kind of happens. Justice League, some of those type folks, and getting more towards like Zaytoven and Metro Boomin and some of those type folks as far as that particular kind of goes. And 808 Mafia, some of those type ones. So South Side. So I look after, is this a good pitch here to kind of get? So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the first and only single off this project, which is Maybe, which is a pretty good pitch. Like I said, I feel like this particular song was a song that was particularly possibly attempted to be the single for Rocko off his second album. I think if this song had hit heavier, I definitely think if maybe it hit heavier, like I'ma Do Me, some pitches like that, and had been like a mammoth kind of monolith single, I definitely think it probably would have been the rollout for like Rocko's second album. We probably would have had another hit album because Rocko basically dropped Self-Made just off a one-hit single, really didn't have anything else, and it's basically pretty much damn near to this day known as like a one-hit wonder. But this is like the attempt, and then they just said screw it, let's throw it on a mixtape, which I'm glad, because I'm glad that this, at least a project came out of this, because he made, some folks would just drop like the standalone single, and then you just would have to sift through and find it yourself and pitches like that. But I'm glad that this particular song had a home body of work. It's a real glistening type one. It's like an electro kind of early bird 2010s trap gem, I'd have to say. In particular, it has a primer feel of like Future, I would have to say, from like his later mixtape days from like 2011 forward, I'd have to suppose, in particular. And this is a pretty definite primer feel of Future sound, I'd have to say. And this is a pretty good club blitzer, I'd have to suppose. Good, nice when it gets sparked up to some pitches like that. Definitely smoke a few, some good concepts, socialize a little bit, initial kind of dap, and just, you know, pitches like that as far as that particular kind of goes. It's a good concept, kind of get some of that. I just look after it. Good pitch to kind of send things out and just be feeling good, feeling a little bit, maybe not so much full-blown trippy, but just within a relative sense, maybe feeling a little bit jarred, glared, some pitches like that. It has, I suppose, good concept for that. It's a nice one, real snazzy type of feel and feel-good song. But yeah, there's plenty of these songs off this particular mixtape, so I'd say 9 times out of 10. This song reminds me of like DJ Khaled. Like there's this song that DJ Khaled dropped off his 2021 album. I forget what it's called. Like I think it's called Every Chance I Get, that has like a similar type production type beat loop as that particular song. Every Chance I Get from 2021 with Lil Durk and Lil Baby and some of those type folks on there. But this one, 9 times out of 10, is pretty good pitch. It's like a typical and kind of vanilla trap evening turn up of a typical and vanilla kind of trap evening turn up of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a club smash with like a rowdy flavor about it, I suppose. It's definitely like a stand on the couch, like a more retro kind of mixtape type format type tune to kind of get here. Just the real aspect of just being able to really get rave and just pitches like that is a good concept for some of those. I do appreciate the energy of this particular song. I mean, it's a little bit of a plodding beat. I will admit that some of these on here, you have to have a little bit of like a learning curve towards some of this, because this is within a relative hardcore territory. I mean, apart from the song Maybe, which is kind of, in most senses, just like a mixtape single, I'd have to say it's more of like a street single more so than anything else. I mean, for more folks that are really wondering, okay, what the hell happened to Rocko, this would probably be the closest thing that I would recommend if you really just want like singles by Rocko, apart from You Ain't Need No and I'ma Do Me and some of those type pitches. But if you're looking for other singles by Rocko, maybe it's probably like the closest thing, apart from like a couple other ones. Not many, but I look after it in terms of like things that just jump off the page. In terms, I mean, Rocko's never been that type of rapper. It's just kind of the concept that he's kind of more in like the hardcore type sense, but it's not to say hardcore to the point where it's not enjoyable. It's just kind of the concept you have to have the mixtape flavor and just know about some of these type bops. It's the same thing with Future, was kind of this way more in 2010 and early 2011, before he had hit songs like Tony Montana and Magic and some of those type ones, and some of his other mixtape type jams, like the song he did with YC and some of those type ones, I would definitely have to suppose it's just a pretty good pitch to kind of get some of that. But in terms of like, it just is not as crossover, I'd have to say. It's just kind of the concept. It's just more kind of murky, kind of goopy type trap type music to kind of get here as far as that particular kind of happens. But it works. It's a good concept. It's kind of, it's good music, but it just has like the abrasiveness of just kind of having to have a learning curve towards it. It's one of those ones with like with nine times out of 10. But some other ones, Always 101 is a nice one. This has a Drummer Boy production, which if you didn't know, Drummer Boy was the producer for I'ma Do Me, so it's nice that Rocko is definitely like a vintage and Rocko kind of Drummer Boy team up. I'd have to say in particular it's a good concept, gets them further chemistry. It's like a ghastly kind of night commerce sneer of a song. I would definitely feel like this is a pretty good local hit. This one just has some real good appeal. This is just typical type fare. It's actually too bad that there wasn't a song like this on Self-Made from 2008. I do feel like in some senses that this particular album, Wildlife, is like the expansion of Self-Made. It's just a good concept of like an update from Rocko as far as particularly wondering where he went. Probably one of the more notable type ones. I mean, I do feel like Swag Season is like the second most notable project by Rocko, minus like the possible project with You Ain't Even Know on there, but I would have to say this is a relatively good one. This is definitely probably in like the top 3 or top 5 of Rocko projects to check out first, I would have to say. Definitely some good concept, but this has, yeah, Always 101 has pretty good Drummer Boy production on there. A nice change of pace would be Rainy Night in Georgia. This is a nice one. This is like a brooding, and a good change of pace, like I was saying, from like the litness factor of most of this particular product. Most of this is kind of club oriented, which was kind of a complaint I had about Swag Season and Self-Made from 2008. Is I just kind of feel like some of those type ones, like apart from I'ma Do Me and possibly Tomorrow off of Self-Made, I just kind of feel like the concept of that particular album, it didn't have as many club smashes that it probably needed. It just needed like something with another good hook on par with some of the singles. But some of this stuff on here, like Rainy Night in Georgia, is definitely a pretty nice one. It's a good song to ruminate. Get to Money, I would definitely feel like it's a good Get to Money gem. Just overall, I'd have to say it's kind of the concept. It's kind of a more illustrious type date. It's kind of the concept of just paying attention and just kind of ruminating within like a relative solemn kind of sense. I just would have to say this is a concept for like an overcast day, pitches like that. But it's a refreshing change of pace to have some of these songs on this particular mixtape, just to showcase the fact that Rocko has other strengths apart from just like the club and night type joints as far as pitches like that kind of go. But a nice one on here that's pretty good, smooth type one that I wasn't expecting is Wings. This is like a butter smooth kind of Zaytoven late 2000s trap bop, I would have to say in particular. A good concept for that. It's like a fresh and minty kind of club step out noise, I would definitely feel like, and this is just some good pull up type music. Definitely appreciate this one. This overall has like it's really like the gloss and overall freshness of this particular song. It's a good concept. It's a swag type song. Back, I mean, by early 2010, swag was starting to be replaced with drip and some of those type fares as far as pitches like that kind of happened. There were some other words, like I forget, there were some other words apart from drip that were kind of popular in like 2011, 2012, 2013 as far as pitches like that kind of happened. Don't remember as full blown, I'd have to say, but Wings is definitely a nice one. Yeah, but Wings is definitely like a good Zaytoven type beat, I would have to suppose. Wings is definitely like a good low key Zaytoven type beat, I'd have to suppose. Pretty similar like Migos and Gucci Mane on like their more low key, kind of calm as kept type productions, I'd have to suppose, in particular. Good, nice one for that. Lingo's a pretty nice one. It's like a vintage kind of late 2000s Rocko trap noise of a. Lingo's a pretty nice one. It's like a vintage kind of late 2000s Rocko, I would have to say. There's definitely some trap noise, and this is like a good night venue snarl. Lingo is like a good night venue snarl and outing gab, I would definitely have to say about this song. It's pretty sparky overall type song. So the thing about this particular song is it provides excitement, I would definitely have to say. Is the concept of being able to get towards a litness factor, just getting up out your seat and just having some bravado about it. This is more like one of those type ones that I was talking about from like the Self-Made days from Rocko, just to throw back to kind of some of those type vibes. I feel like Wings is a little bit like that. Lingo's a little bit like that more. I'd have to suppose it's a good concept of something if you do miss the vibes of like songs like Tomorrow and some of those type vibes off the club joints off of Self-Made, like Tomorrow and I'ma Do Me and some of those type pitches. Lingo's just a nice pounding bravado type one to kind of get. Just a good nice one. This is, I mean, some of these are just stock highlights. That's why it's kind of surprising that Rocko didn't promote this project more. It's too bad that he wasn't really given a chance. I noticed some of the reviews on like Rate Your Music and some of those type places, possibly even Amazon. It just feels like this guy in particular, Rocko, tends to get like a lot of bad rap just because people don't like his lyricism. They kind of feel like he's a weaker type lyricist. I will say on this particular album that there's a lot of gimmick songs. There's some songs like Up, some songs like Maybe, some songs like Lingo, some songs like Over, Wings, 4 Minutes. some of these type ones. There's probably at least another one, 9 times out of 10, some of these type ones where he repeats the chorus in the song and like some of the verses and pitches like that. A lot of these have pretty simplistic topics, I would have to say, but they're not bad songs. It just kind of has like a more of a learning curve type pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. I mean, the productions are pretty excellent on here. A lot of these just have a lot of gliss appeal, a lot of good trap-centric type stuff. And the thing about these Zaytoven beats is just the fact that they're localized. This kind of calls for like some house party type fare and just more around the neighborhood type pitches. I feel like song like Wings is a pretty good and fresh nightclub type song to get. As is like Maybe I would definitely have to suppose. And there's some other ones on here like 9 times out of 10 that kind of do that just within that relative concept. But there are some ones in like the Zaytoven type fashion. Like I feel like Over is kind of like that. Numbers is kind of like that. And like with Future is kind of like that. So it's just some good concepts. But Guaranteed is a pretty nice one. Has a cool cat on here named Raphael that does a nice butter smooth hook, just like some of these other type ones like Wings, I'd have to say. Not Wings doesn't have a butter smooth hook, but it's just a concept that's another smooth type one to kind of get. So Wings Guaranteed is like a hooky and kind of mixtape commercial snap of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like an early 2010s Gucci and Future type vibes that this song particularly kind of gives, and this like an SFW type club type joint to kind of get. Definitely feels like some just got done with work shifts and pitches like that, just switch into flip mode as far as that particular kind of goes. Just some entry type club type noise kind of get, just the initial dap getting as far as that particular kind of goes. Just within the aspect of just showing up and just the dap, just within the showing up and fraternizing and kickback as far as that particular kind of goes. Just some good concepts for that. Do you like the appeal behind it? This is a minty type one. There's some minty type ones on here. I do like some of this swag and freshened up type pitches as far as that particular kind of goes. Guaranteed, Wings, some of those type ones. I feel like Maybe it's a pretty good snazzy type appeal about it. There's just some good nice ones. Rocko's pretty similar to T.I. with some of those smooth type ones. T.I. Too Short, Lil Fate, some of those type folks that kind of had that relative pimpish type vibe about it. It's a good concept for some of that. Good pitch. Lord Have Mercy is a pretty nice one. It's like a night commerce and solid late makeshift of a song, I'd have to say in particular. This one's definitely some relative work shift on here. It's like some relative work shift on here compared to some of these type ones. There's another one I was trying to think of that was kind of like this. I want to say it was probably like Always One of One, some of those type ones, but there's probably at least another one like a song like Up is kind of like that, just in a more day type sense. But Lord Have Mercy is like some night commerce, late makeshift. This song has character, and it's just like a good song for like a rainy. This song has character like the song Rainy Night in Georgia, I'd have to say. Good pitch for some of these type ones. Not quite as brooding as Rainy Night in Georgia, but definitely the concept of having some extra character with some of those Tupac type vibes, of having something thuggish just within the aspect of being able to do something different apart from just strictly night blitz and just smoke songs and lady songs. As far as that, those pitches can happen, just pizzazz, I would have to say. So it's just a good concept to have some night commerce and just the aspect of just getting some errands done, just that last pitch of just that standard commerce. Lord Have Mercy's glitzy production is pretty similar to like a standard kind of get to the money type song, just a bustle disc of one that this is kind of more driven and pitches like that, but it is a pretty good concept for like a early 2010s hustle type tune to kind of get here. So that's a nice one. Over is a pretty nice one as well. It's like a vintage kind of Zaytoven and Gucci Mane vibes that this song particularly kind of gives. It's like a neighborhood commerce and lace up type song to kind of get. This like a money song I would definitely feel like in a smoke song to kind of get to. So it's just a concept. Haven't talked as full blown about smoking as much on this particular product. There are some ones on here I would feel like Numbers is a pretty nice one for that. I definitely feel like these Zaytoven beats more so than some of the other ones on here just has a relative good pitch. I mean, the thing about the Zaytoven production is a lot of these on here when I think of songs like Numbers, Over, and like some of those type ones, like at least another one on here I'm trying to think of. But some of these localized type Zaytoven productions like Over, Wings, and Numbers definitely have those relative concepts that just like neighborhood house parties and pitches like that. So I'm glad that Rocko continued like some of these house party type fairs as far as pitches like that kind of happen. It's not as much like an outright statement about some of these kind of being that way, but the thing about a lot of these Zaytoven productions, when you think of Migos and OJ the Juice Man, Gucci Mane in some senses when they do some of these, it just kind of that typical kind of Zaytoven vanilla type beat that you've probably heard a number of times just with that twinkling type fair. I feel like a lot of these just kind of have that aspect of just kind of good trap turn up, but also just lacing up ends, just the relative concept of some of that. You know, these Zaytoven productions just have some overall trap sleaze and sludge as far as that particular kind of goes. It's a good relative social depth kind of get with a lot of this, just kind of the concept of just, and I do appreciate that concept kind of has some of this just because the concept of it, yeah, some of these trap songs by Zaytoven and Rocko like Over, Wings, and Numbers, some of these particular type pitches really have that house party type sleeves to kind of get just within the concept of like a sludgy type fair just for like some social commotion production, which is a pretty good concept just because I look after it. It's just a necessary kind of thing to kind of have for some of that, just kind of an extra kind of flair to kind of get here. But I think I have to say I wrapped up the rest of this particular type project. I don't think I've talked about yet, so I'll get to that one. With Future. Basically, the only real guest rapper on this particular product is just Future. I'd have to say he's on here 3 times, and then Raphael does a hook on here. But basically, is like a dizzy kind of evening head trip vibes of a song. I'd have to say it's like a smoke good kind of social noise. I would definitely feel like, and it's like some hangout fare even local wise. I suppose so. It's just a good concept. It's definitely a pretty trippy type one. I mean, this particular song, just feels a little bit more lower budget and localized to really be like a full blown nightclub kind of pizzazz. I feel like it's just a little bit more of like a pedestrian type one to kind of get in particular. But I would have to say it does have some relative snap, maybe for like a more hole in the wall type place, pitches like that, where it's going to be more beer can sipping more so than actual like shot glass type music and just more expensive liquor. I'd say champagne, some stuff like that. It's a relative good concept. It's not like it's a bad song. This song is pretty another nice glitzy kind of one to get. It's a great one to smoke to. I would definitely not mind smoking some of these type songs on here. Maybe some of those type ones. The song Maybe, the song some of those type ones. Wings definitely would be a nice one. That's a great song to really get stoned to. The overall bravado, energy, a lingo, some of those type ones. So I just look after it. It's kind of the thing. So this is kind of pedestrian production on here. I just would say not pedestrian in terms of like the overall quality, but just pedestrian in like the overall abrasiveness of just being able to say in terms of like the ones that are going to stand out in like a more casual type sense, or something that would have like something that's going to connect just in a more universal kind of boundary, as far as not just okay, you got rap on the brain 24/7 or 23/7, something like that. I suppose there are some ones on here I feel like maybe has pretty much, I feel like that's at least middle of the road when it comes to like something that could be in like casual type appeal. I don't know how many folks out of like 50 would probably know about this particular song in terms of like a normal format, but just being able to say it's at least a good bounce, a kind of one to have some snap about it. I feel like there's some good songs on here, like Wings is a pretty nice one, like some relative step out type appeal. Some that really may be it in terms of like the casual type appeal it had, supposed to just kind of a concept. But yeah, we'll just keep going with this. So Up is a pretty nice one. This has Future on there as well. I'd say it's like an early bird kind of template for future Pluto days. I would definitely have to say in particular. It's like an energized kind of poppy trap motivator. I'd say, and it's a pretty bustling type one. So this one is kind of one that kind of reminds me of something that Future would do, just like one of those type ones, like Go Harder. I forget what the name of that particular song was, but it was like the bonus song. It was like a bonus single on like the deluxe edition of Pluto, something like that. Just kind of one that's like a motivator, just a real pop trap type one that Future wound up doing. This really has like that more watered down type spark. This really has that more watered down type spark about it. It has, supposed in particular. It's commercial. I mean, this one has some relative commercial about it, but it's just a little bit watered down within that aspect. So this is kind of more for like more grafted and kind of suited type aspects, I'd have to say. But that's just kind of the thing. So I've really had a lot to say about this particular project. I'm just trying to figure out as to what else there really is to talk about here. If there's any other songs I've missed as far as that particular pitch kind of goes along with it. I don't know if I talked about Numbers either. So there's a lot of these. I've been kind of chatty on this particular review, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that Numbers is like around the neighborhood kind of commotion of a song I'd had to say in particular. It's like a local kind of Zaytoven type beat to kind of get here. It's like a situate and smoke one type song to kind of get definitely. And it's like some good jive. Is what I'd say about some of these. Just the particular concept of just getting towards some of this viciousness as far as that kind of goes with it. Yeah, Numbers is definitely like some good Zaytoven type turn up as far as pitches like that kind of happen. Just more trap back jumping type fare as far as pitches like that kind of go when you think of like that T.I. song or the DJ Paul songs and pitches like that. Just trap back jumping type pitches, neighborhood romps, just pitches like that. Just some good smokish type fare and just overall glared type turn up that just has some good localized type craze about it. Good concepts. So yeah, I think that particularly takes care of this particular product. I don't know why this one took as long as it particularly did, considering that there were only really 12 songs I had to talk about, but whatever, we'll just go with it. This is kind of the concept. So I look after, yeah, this album, this mixtape gets a 10 out of 10. The social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'll give the social score like an 8.5 out of 10 because I feel like it does have the appeal about it. I like a lot of these songs in here. It has a lot of good glitz as far as that particular kind of goes. Maybe is a pretty good highlighted one, but like I said, out of 50 people that may not all be hardcore fans of rap, I kind of question like the overall shrillness of like the aspect of just like how the overall glamour and just attention grabbing appeal that that song would particularly kind of have. And I look after it, there's some ones on here. The social outings is pretty good. I like these Zaytoven beats. I like a lot of this. I like the Drummer Boy beat on here. I like the Future verses and pitches like that. Some good concepts. A lot of this was like some trend setting type sounds, kind of amalgamation like the OJ, the Juice Man, and Gucci Mane and Migos type sound that Zaytoven was kind of crafting, plus a little bit of like the future type sound that would manifest on like Pluto and his 2011 mixtapes, his Pluto days from 2012, Pluto 3D, some of those type pitches, and within that relative concept. So it just has that good pitch, especially pretty poignant for early 2010 before a lot of that stuff kind of happened, or at least when it was in the early stages in the OJ, the Juice Man days. Pretty much has that spark, I'd say. It's just an excellent type concept kind of get. A lot of these are social. There is some makeshift on here, some pitches like that, I'd have to suppose. So yeah, there's some makeshift type songs on here like Up. There's some makeshift type songs on here like little bit of like Rainy Night in Georgia, Lord Have Mercy, some of those type ones I'd have to say to some pitches like that, to some good relative type appeals, at least a good enough concept. At least I would say if it's not in like a blue collar makeshift type format, I would definitely say it's at least in a hustler's makeshift type format. So it's just some good appeal to kind of have some of that, just the relative bustle, some good commerce on here, just the concept. But a lot of this is, I feel like there are some club bops on here, but it does kind of blend relatively well, like the concept of localized type track. It blends like the concept pretty well of localized type turn up with like some good nightclub type turn up, but it's not really like a floss album. I don't feel like it's as much floss music, stunt music, and pull up type music as full blown. This is looking snazzy, but not looking like 10 out of 10, like dressed to impress, kind of dressed that looks to kill, I would have to say, in terms of that relative aspect. But it's still some good stuff, I would have to say. It's definitely a money getting project, but it's this kind of concept that's not on full display. It's full blown. I look after, so 8.5 social, I just would have to say. In terms of the future, like Rocko has kind of put out projects here and there. Apparently, I was looking Rocko up on Wikipedia. Apparently, he hasn't dropped a mixtape since 2016 or pitches like that. He hasn't put out an album since 2008. And I think that's pretty much the only album he's ever going to drop. That's just kind of the concept. I mean, by this stage, that's pretty much known, but it's just kind of the concept that this is a quality project here. I mean, Rocko really outdid himself on here. It's a 10 out of 10 project. A lot of this, despite the fact that the casual factor is not as severely high, I'd still would have to say it's a good concept to kind of see a lot of this quality on here. So I do appreciate that. It's an easy one to recommend, but just realize it does have a learning curve. So if you're not a hardcore, if you really don't know a thing about Rocko beyond the song I'ma Do Me or some pitches like that, it may take more getting used to, but it's still a good concept that a lot of this is pretty blitzing quality.